So since we're going to be talking this week about faithful living in a faithless world, and since we're going to be considering such a topic that is of great need and importance, we talked this morning about our need to take this seriously, to think seriously about the things that we will be discussing and learning about this week. I wanted to spend just a little bit of time this evening talking about how we can get the most from these lessons. Whether we are young or old alike, these are lessons that we need to learn, and these are lessons that might require of us time of meditation and study and really contemplating and thinking on the things that we're discussing. And it might be that at the end of this week, you could be left wishing, I wished I'd gotten more out of that. So I want to give you some advice at the beginning of the week to maybe help head that thought off. And you just imagine, we're talking about this being very important, you just imagine that you learn that there's going to be a series of lessons, there's going to be some discussions taking place, and at the end of these discussions, you will have everything you need to be a millionaire by the end of the week. And you go to these lessons with the great hope that you're going to take that information in and you're going to use it, and by the end of the week, you too are going to be a millionaire. And how frustrated you would be. By the end of that week, you just went, I didn't get anything from that. I didn't comprehend any of it. It didn't help me at all. I have no idea how to take those things and apply that in my life in such a way that I can get that goal of $1 million. You would be so upset. And maybe that upset would be with yourself, and maybe that you would be upset with the people at the seminar, but you would be so frustrated by the time that you would have felt like you wasted. I don't want you to feel that way at the close of this week, because we have a lofty goal. Our lofty goal is heaven. And I want these lessons to be beneficial to you in such a way as that you feel at the end of this week, I am more prepared to reach the prize that I have set my eyes upon. And so I'm just going to give you 3 things today that I think will help us to foster a better understanding of faithfulness. That's our goal this week, is to understand faithfulness better, to see it in action in the lives of others, and then be able to put that in action in our lives. So I want to help foster that with just 3 bits of advice. The first one comes from Exodus chapter 17. You want to turn your Bibles over there. We'll read that passage in a moment. I'll just summarize this by saying, don't give up. At the end of this week, if things have been hard, don't give up. And support one another and look for the support that you need. So Exodus 17 is a really interesting passage, and the story that you read about here is nothing short of miraculous. We might not put it in the same place as the Red Sea crossing, but it is just the same power as the Red Sea crossing. Let's look together in verse 8. Exodus 17, verse 8. Then Amalek came and fought against Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, choose men for us and go out and fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. Joshua did as Moses told him and fought against Amalek, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So it came about when Moses held his hand up that Israel prevailed, and when he let his hand down, Amalek prevailed, but Moses' hands were heavy. Then they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, and Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other. And thus his hands were steady until the sun set. And so Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And we're going to stop right there. But as I said, that's miraculous what's taking place there. Let me tell you, the key to winning a battle is not having a chief up on the hill doing this. That does not lead to victory. And yet, what's going on here? Anytime Moses is holding that staff up above his head, the children of Israel are prevailing. And as it starts to drop, they start to lose the battle. Now, as we think about what's going on there, I want you to just kind of put yourself in the position of different people in that story. Moses would have been so frustrated. Moses would have been so frustrated as the people around him begin to lose the battle. And by the way, we're not talking a basketball game or some sort of sporting event. When Israel is prevailing, that means Amalek soldiers are dying. You are counting more dead Amalek soldiers on the field. But when Israel is losing, Amalek is prevailing. That means the children of God are being slaughtered. People are dying. Do you think that just did not bother Moses at all? As he knows the only thing I have to do to change this is lift my hands up. Put yourself in the shoes of Joshua or of Aaron and Hur. We see what's happening. We see the seriousness of this. How frustrating it would have been to know those are people that I love. Those maybe are people that are my family members. And the only thing that needs to happen is Moses needs to raise his hands back up. This would have been a very difficult and frustrating time in the lives of Israel. But what's truly inspiring about this passage is not just that it's miraculous. What's inspiring about it is that it is a miracle that takes place and it highlights what it looks like when family acts like family. Now, just for a moment, think about the people that are on the mountain with Moses, Aaron and Hur. We know Aaron. We know him. That's Moses' brother. We're well acquainted with him. Who's Hur? I mean, we're going to read his name in other places, but they're almost always just saying that he had a son. And so-and-so was the son of Hur. This is about the only time that we get any sort of information about this man and what he's doing. But you know what Jewish tradition has long held to? Jewish tradition has long thought and reasoned that Hur is the husband of Miriam. If that's the case, that means that Moses is on the mountain with his family, his brother and his brother-in-law. And how easy would it have been for family to act like how family sometimes acts? Come on, Moses. All you have to do, like they're doing the hard work down there. They're fighting, they're swinging the swords. Just lift the staff above your head. But I love this passage. And you know what? I think we're going to come back to it. We're going to spend a lot more time in it because it's just a beautiful picture. But there's a few things that I want us to take from it tonight to help us foster faithfulness. And that number one thing is don't give up. Do not give up when things get hard. How many times can Moses just said, no, I'm not the guy for this. This is not what I can accomplish. You need to get somebody else. But he doesn't give up. And just like this week, if you're setting through these classes, if you're in these studies and you're going, hey, listen, that is up here and I am down here. It's going over my head. I don't understand it. I am struggling. My weakness, like Moses' weakness, my weakness is I just can't get this. I have a hard time paying attention to it. I feel like the teacher is being just a little bit too boring with it or is maybe putting it on too high a level for me. I want you to see what Moses saw in those moments. Moses looked down at this and said, this is life and death. And a faithful relationship with God is no different. A faithful relationship with God is life and death stuff. And so in that moment, just like what Moses needed, you need someone to lift your hands. You need someone to support you. And you know what? The people who are presenting these lessons, the men and women who are going to be teaching you all this week, there's going to be moments when you might go, I'm struggling with all of this, and I just need somebody to lift me up and to give me some help in understanding these lessons. Don't be afraid to ask for that help. This week, don't be afraid to come to somebody and say, look, I'm having a hard time, and maybe you could just help me understand that point that you made, or help me understand how this can teach me something. Just help me figure this out. Don't be afraid to go to your teachers and ask that. Don't be afraid to come to me and ask that, or one of the elders. Don't be afraid to get your parents involved and say, this is what we talked about in class, and I'm not sure I really get it. Can you help me understand it? But don't be afraid to ask for someone to support you in all of this. But also, don't minimize, or worse yet, don't criticize the efforts that are being made to help you in this. What did we see this morning? Aaron is good at criticism. He knows how to do it. He's going to be reprimanded by God for doing it in Numbers, as we saw this morning. He knows how to criticize in this moment, but what does he do? He goes to Moses and he says, you're the guy for this job, and I'm going to help you do it. The people that are going to be teaching you all this week, they already know that they're not the best person to be doing this. I can guarantee you that. The people that are going to be teaching you all this week, they already are self-conscious about whether or not they're going to do a good job and whether or not they're going to get everything right and whether or not they're going to mix their words up. So have some grace with them and think about them for who they are. People that love you enough to do something that they're probably not the most comfortable doing, but they're going to do it anyway because they see the importance. They see this is life or death. This is about faithfulness with God. And you know what? If you go to them and say, hey, can you help me understand this better? I guarantee you what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know, I kind of had a hard time with that as well. Let's look at it together closely, or let's get somebody else and let's help us both understand it better. But they have already demonstrated by the amount of time that they've put into these lessons, they want you to know about the power and the impact that faithfulness to God has. So, if you're struggling with this week, what I want you to know is don't give up and look for and offer support to one another. The next thing I want you to know is be a true friend. This comes from 1 Samuel chapter 18, if you want to open your Bibles to that passage. Be a true friend to one another and lift one another up this week. But also be a true friend to one another and be willing to warn each other this week. 1 Samuel 18 is a beautiful picture. And in fact, the picture of Jonathan and David is a holy picture of true friendship. It's been said that of all of the loves, of all of the different loves that you can think of, the love of husband and wife, the love of father and son, the love of family, the love of friends is one of the sweetest and one of the most impactful loves that there is. And I think you see why people say that in the story of Jonathan and David. Read with me verse 1. It came about when he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. Saul took him that day and did not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, including his sword and his bow and his belt. In this picture, what makes this so beautiful is the complete lack of competition between David and Jonathan. There is no doubt in my mind as they grow up together, and they're not babies at this point. We think of little boy David. This is right after Goliath. Think of little boy David. He's not a baby. He is a young man. He is a young adult most likely. But there's still a lot of growth that's going to take place in his life before he ever stands as a king. And during that time, some of it will be spent in the presence of Jonathan. And I have to imagine these two great best friends, they did compete together in ways. I'm certain that they would have went into battle and said, well, let's see who can get to the battle first, and let's race there. And I'm certain that there was competition, but it was never about who's the greatest, though. And that's evident right here. When Jonathan, who is arguably the most important in the story, even though we tend to think David is, Jonathan, the son of the king, takes off his royal garments. The robe that the son of the king gets to wear, the armor that the son of the king gets to wear, the sword that belongs to the son of the king. He takes that off and he puts it on this shepherd, this young man that had no right wearing all of that royal garmentry. He says, here, let's lift you up. Let's let you be higher than me by me taking off my things that point me out and putting them on you for a moment. So there is no competition here. That is one of the great things about this friendship, is it's all about lifting up and encouraging the other one, not focusing on myself. But when you go further in chapter 20, we'll see that it was more than just, well, I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to say hard things to you even if I know it's going to completely change our relationship. Look at chapter 20 with me, verses 35 through 42. It came about in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field for the appointment with David, and a little lad was with him. He said to his lad, Run, find now the arrows which I am about to shoot. And as the lad was running, he shot an arrow past him. When the lad reached the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called after the lad and said, Is not the arrow beyond you? Jonathan then called after the lad, Hurry, be quick, do not stay. And Jonathan's lad picked up the arrow and came to his master. But the lad was not aware of anything. Only Jonathan and David knew about the matter. Then Jonathan gave his weapon to the lad and said to him, Go bring them to the city. And when the lad was gone, David rose from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times. And they kissed each other and wept together. But David wept the more. Jonathan said to David, Go in safety, inasmuch as you have sworn to each other in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord will be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. Then he arose and departed while Jonathan went into the city. Now, I know we started that kind of in the middle of the story, but what has happened here is David is in danger. This is life and death. He is in danger of losing his life at the hands of King Saul. And Jonathan has told him, Look, I'm going to go find out just how much danger you're in. And when I know, we've got a signal. I'm going to shoot an arrow, and when the boy goes to fetch it, if I tell him it went past him, then you can know for certain that you're in danger. My father's going to kill you. And what that means is you got to flee. You can't stay here with me anymore. This great friendship that is all about lifting one another up, it ends. It doesn't end. It changes right here. It is transformed because we're not going to be in each other's presence anymore. And thus you see the pain and sorrow that brings to them. This was not an easy thing. They are crushed because they recognize the significance of what's happening in this moment. So how do we take that and we learn something that is going to help us this week? What I want you to take from that is that we need to be true friends to one another. And we need to lift one another up. And we need to make sure that we warn one another. What I want you to do as you go to class this week, as you're sitting in your classes, I want you to look around at all the people that are in the room with you. And I want you to evaluate, not them, evaluate the way that you view them. When you look at them, evaluate the thoughts that you think when you see that person. Do you look at that person and go, you know what? That person needs these lessons on faithfulness. When you look at that person, do you look at them and say, that person never has their classwork done, and they don't seem to take things seriously. They need to step up in their relationship with God. What I encourage you to do is use this week as an opportunity to humble yourself, to lower the view that you have of you as having everything right and everything under control and needing to look out and judge the way that other people are living. Recognize that you are someone that needs to continue to grow. You are someone who needs to take faithfulness more seriously. You are someone who lives at a time where you make decisions in your life, and faith in God isn't what's stepping out in front to make those decisions. And I can say that because I know that I am someone that needs to be humbled and look at my own life and recognize there's times when faith isn't making the decisions when I step out. And there's areas where I need to grow as well. So use this as a week to lower ourselves. But we don't lower ourselves and go, all right, we did it. That's not what Jonathan did. Lowering ourselves is only half the task of being a true friend. Because the other half is elevating somebody else. Elevating our partners, our friends. Recognizing that we see someone and go, you know what, your faith isn't, you don't take it as seriously as you should. I need to lower myself and see that, yep, I need to grow myself. And you know what? There are things that my friend does that show that they have a concern, they have a thought, they have a belief in God. And so find ways to be positive in your relationship. This week, find ways to tell your friends, I notice the way that you talk that reflects that God is very important to you. I notice the way that you treat the people very close to you, maybe. I notice how you treat the people who you don't have a very good relationship with. I see that the way faith is impacting and shaping the way that you live. Find something positive to lift them up. So you're going to lower yourself and you're going to lift them up. And if that sounds like anything familiar to you besides just what we read in Jonathan and David, that's Jesus. Philippians chapter 2, he lowers himself by emptying himself and taking on the form of man so he could raise up you and me. That's a true friend. But true friends don't just encourage. As we saw in Jonathan and David, true friends also warn. They rebuke. They say at times hard things, and they recognize this might change our relationship. We may not have the same relationship today or tomorrow that we have right now, but I recognize, just like David and Jonathan, that this is life and death. This is serious. And so I need to go to my friend and say, hey, this might be something important to think about as well. I'm all about lifting you up, and here's the things that you're doing really good, and I'm so thankful for your example in that. But you know, there are also places that you need to really think about this. You know, you seem like you come into class and you just don't really care if you're there or not. And maybe we need to think together about how important this is. I want to learn from it, and I hope you want to learn from it as well. But encourage them, but also warn them. Because you see the danger. Because you see the significance, the seriousness of the situation. Be a true friend. Encourage and warn. And then the last thing that I want you to do, the last tip that I have for you this week, to try and make sure that we get the most out of this week that we can, is I want you to think very seriously about the things that we were talking about faithfulness. And I want you to ask yourself, what do I want to get out of this week? This morning we discussed how faithfulness is about a relationship with God. If your honest answer as you think about it is not, what do I hope for the most this week? It's God. If it's not that, then ask yourself this question. What is it that I need to lay down? What is it that I need to set aside? Because it is standing between me and what is most important, my God. Matthew chapter 5, verses 29 through 30. Many of us probably know that passage well. It is during the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus talks and says this very frustrating and shocking statement where he says that if something causes you to sin, that you should pluck out your eye. If your eye causes you sin, pluck it out. If your hand causes you sin, you should cut it off. He goes on to say that it's better to go through life maimed than to enter into hell with both your hands or both your eyes. And it's shocking because of just the brutality of the statement, the thought of plucking out and cutting off, but also of the nature of the man who's giving the lesson. Jesus is we think about Jesus as just love. He's the God that is representing all of these warm concepts that we like, and yet now he's talking about hell. He's talking about cutting things off, and it's just such a shocking statement, but it stresses the significance of what's going on. Again, it brings it back to life and death situations. And developing a relationship of faith with God is something to be taken very seriously. So spend this week thinking about the lessons and asking yourself, are there things that I need to part ways with? Are there things that I need to part ways with so I can develop more of a relationship with my God and escape the realities of hell? There's a book that was written by C.S. Lewis. I'm going to stand over here as I say that. There's a book that was written by C.S. Lewis called The Great Divorce. In it, he says this in the preface of the book. If we insist on keeping hell or even earth, we shall not see heaven. If we accept heaven, we shall not be able to retain even the smallest and most intimate souvenirs of hell. He says this as he goes on to try and give us an idea of what the book is about. And if you have not read it, I greatly encourage. It's a wonderful read. But during it, he kind of gives this picture of people who have an opportunity to visit heaven. And the question is, will you stay? You've been brought here and you're in heaven, or at least you're so close that you can just see into the city. You can see into the dwelling place. And the question is, what's going to keep you from going on in and staying there permanently? And that's what the book kind of deals with, are the various answers that keep people from staying in heaven. If we insist on keeping the souvenirs of this life, of that which is not the eternal resting, dwelling place of God, then we need to ask ourselves, what souvenirs do we need to lay aside? What do we need to cut off? What do we need to pluck out? Because maybe faithfulness is nice, that's a good thing, but man, popularity is really what I'm interested in right now. Physical appearance and strength, worldly success, these are the things that I value. And if you're sitting here today going, well, how can I know for certain what I value the most? How can I know what is that souvenir that I'm just clutching onto and refuse to let go of? Ask yourself, what are you most happy to talk about? What are you most excited to share with others about yourself or about what you know? What is most important to you? Which souvenir makes you the proudest? Which souvenir are you most excited with? You know, Ryder did make a fantastic joke about me, standing up here and talking about C.S. Lewis. It's funny because it's true. But afterwards, Ryder also had a very mature conversation with me, in which I asked him, I said, that was a good joke. You got a lot of laughs from that. I mean, I think you got a lot more laughs than I get. How did you feel about that? And he said, I really liked it. He said, I really liked it when everybody laughed at my joke. And I asked him, I said, well then, what was most important to you? That everybody laugh at your joke? Or that everybody know that there's a God that loves them enough to adopt them? And that they can be known by that God and they can come to know Him. And he said, that's what I really wanted them to take away. It's what I took away, even though I got made fun of. I took away that he really wanted us to know. I appreciated that conversation that we shared with one another about that. Because that's how we come to learn about our souvenirs. What's most important to me? What makes me feel the best? What is it that I just say, that's my goal? If it's not God, if we've missed that, I'm just always reminded of the preacher where I grew up. If you miss heaven, you've missed everything. You know, somebody once said, the Pharisees only missed heaven by 18 inches. The Pharisees only missed heaven by 18 inches. That's the distance from your brain to your heart. I don't want to miss heaven by even an inch. Because if you've missed heaven, you've missed it all. What is it that will keep me from heaven, that needs to be laid aside this week as I focus on faithfulness? As we end this lesson, I want to ask you this question. And as I do, recognize that I'm asking all of us, but I'm primarily asking the young folks here that are going to be listening to these lessons, that are going to be in the back spending time focusing on this. All of us need to reflect on this next question, but I really want to ask you all this. Do you want to go to heaven? Do you want to be with God in eternity? Before you answer that question, you say, yes, of course I do. I mean, who wouldn't answer yes to that? I want to be in heaven. There's no sports there. There's no track, there's no softball, there's no baseball, there's no basketball, there's no sports in heaven. And you know what? You're not the center of attention there either. Nobody's looking at you going, you're the funniest, you're the smartest, you're the strongest, you're the fastest. And guess what? You're also not needed there. You think, well, how can you say that? I'm not needed in heaven. Because in heaven we have everything that we need. Do you still want to go to heaven? I want to go to heaven so very bad. And I want you to go to heaven because that's where God is. And He has shown us over and over again through the stories of the Bible and in our own lives that He is a faithful God that has worked hard to to build a relationship with us as a father, as a king, as a judge. He's trying to show us who He is so that we will come to know that it is best and it is true and it is real to be in His presence, and He is bringing us in. And we can go to heaven if we want to. People ask, why would God send anybody to hell? And I always want to answer that and say, He won't. God will not send a single one of you to hell. You will choose to go there. God wants to bring you to heaven. And He has given His Son that can be possible for you. I hope you will reflect on that this week. And if you are thinking about that right now and you want to begin the journey to heaven with God, think of the words of Christ when He said, "The path is through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except for me." If we can help you today to begin your journey to heaven, it doesn't matter about who you are today. It matters about who He is right now. Let's talk about that together. Come forward as we stand and sing.